a step too close. You know when people tell you to trust your gut? Yeah, I ignored mine, and I don't think I'll ever make that mistake again. So, a little backstory. I'm an avid camper, the kind of person who thinks roughing it means a tent, a fire, and absolutely no cell service. This all happened last fall. I decided to go solo camping for the weekend because I'd had a crappy week at work and just wanted to clear my head. I packed my gear, drove out to this little-known spot in the mountains, and set up camp next to a quiet lake. It was picture perfect. The first day was normal. I hiked, read a book by the water, and just soaked in the peace and quiet. But that night, something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it. You ever get that feeling like someone's watching you? It was that. I shook it off, told myself I was just spooking myself because I was alone, and eventually fell asleep in my tent. At some point, I woke up to this weird sound, like faint footsteps outside my tent. It wasn't an animal. I know the sounds of wildlife, and this was deliberate, human. I stayed completely still, listening, heart pounding so hard I thought whoever was out there would hear it. The footsteps circled my tent slowly, like they were trying to be quiet, but weren't quite succeeding. I wanted to call out, but my gut screamed at me not to. So I stayed silent, clutching the knife I always keep in my sleeping bag. After what felt like forever, the footsteps stopped. I waited, straining my ears for any sound, but there was nothing. Just the wind in the trees. I must have stayed awake for another 2 hours, barely breathing, before exhaustion finally took over and I fell asleep. The next morning, I told myself it was probably just my imagination or some hiker who wandered too close to my camp. I packed up to move to a different spot just in case. But as I was taking down my tent, I noticed something. Around my campsite were footprints, barefoot. Whoever it was had walked around my tent and then just disappeared. No trail leading away. It was like they'd vanished. I decided to cut my trip short, but before I left, I went down to the lake to grab some water. That's when I saw it. Across the lake, maybe 100 yards away, was a figure. Tall, thin, and pale. Just standing there, watching me. I froze, trying to process what I was seeing. It wasn't moving, just standing completely still. Then, it tilted its head, like it was curious. That was enough for me. I grabbed my stuff and bolted back to my car, not even caring that I left half my gear behind. As I drove away, I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see that thing following me. I don't know what I saw that day. Part of me wants to believe it was just some weirdo messing with me. But deep down, I know that wasn't it. I've never gone back to that spot. Sweet dreams if you sleep at all. We'll see you next time on Nightmare Natives.